It was just another long day for Mike, a hard-working plumber who had spent the last 10 years fixing leaks, unclogging drains, and crawling under sinks in every part of town. He never expected much from his job, just an honest day's work and enough to keep food on the table. But this one call, this one job, was about to change his life in a way he never could have imagined. The request had come in late in the afternoon. An elderly man named Mr. Thompson had called, his voice shaky but polite. "Son, I hate to bother you, but my kitchen sink's been leaking something awful. I don't have much money, but if you could just take a look, I'd be real grateful." There was something about his tone, gentle, humble, maybe even a little embarrassed, that made Mike pause. Most people just expected plumbers to show up and fix their problems, but this man sounded different. Mike could have said no. He had already finished his last job for the day and was ready to head home, but something in his gut told him to go. Maybe it was the way Mr. Thompson had hesitated before asking for help, or maybe it was just the simple kindness in his voice. Either way, Mike found himself driving to the other side of town, where the houses were a little older, the streets a little quieter. When he pulled up to the house, it was clear that time had worn it down. The paint on the porch was peeling. The windows looked like they hadn't been cleaned in years, and the small front yard was overgrown with weeds. Mike knocked on the door, and after a few moments, it creaked open to reveal Mr. Thompson, thin, hunched over, but with a warm smile on his face. "Thank you for coming, son," he said, his hands trembling slightly as he gestured Mike inside. The house was small, cluttered with old photographs and furniture that had clearly been around for decades. It smelled of coffee and worn-out wood, the kind of scent that reminded Mike of his own grandfather's home. Mr. Thompson led him to the kitchen, where a steady drip from the sink echoed in the quiet room. "Started leaking last week," he explained. "Tried to fix it myself, but these old hands ain't what they used to be." Mike crouched down and got to work, inspecting the pipes. It was a simple fix, just a worn-out washer that needed replacing, a job that would take him no more than 15 minutes. As he worked, he listened to Mr. Thompson talk about his late wife, how they'd lived in this house for over 50 years, how their kids had all moved away. "It gets a little lonely," he admitted, his voice soft. Mike tightened the last bolt and stood up, wiping his hands on a rag. "All done," he said with a smile. "Shouldn't give you any more trouble." Mr. Thompson sighed in relief. "Bless you, son. How much do I owe you?" He reached for his wallet, but Mike shook his head. "Nothing," he said. It was an easy fix. The old man's eyes widened. No, I can't let you do that. You worked hard." Mike smiled. "Mr. Thompson, I've had a good day. Let this one be on me." For a moment, the elderly man just stared at him. Then his eyes glistened. He reached out and patted Mike's arm. "You don't know what this means to me." Mike didn't think much of it. It was just a small act of kindness, one that he hoped would make Mr. Thompson's day a little easier. He left feeling good, not expecting anything in return. But what happened next was something he never could have seen coming, say. Week later, a package arrived at Mike's doorstep. No return address, no name, just a plain brown envelope with his name written on it. Inside was something that made his hands tremble, his heart race, and left him absolutely speechless. Mike stood frozen at his doorstep, staring at the package. In his hands, his heart pounded as a strange mix of curiosity and unease crept over him. Who would send him something without a name or return address? He had no idea. But as he carefully tore open the brown envelope, his breath caught in his throat. Inside was a thick stack of $100 bills, crisp and neatly bundled together. Mike's hand shook as he counted. $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. He swallowed hard, his mind racing. This had to be a mistake. No one just sends that kind of money out of the blue. He looked back inside the envelope and found a small folded note tucked between the bills. For your kindness. You have no idea how much it meant. Thank you. That was it. No signature, no explanation. Just those simple words. Mike sat down on the edge of his porch, running a hand through his hair. His thoughts immediately went to Mr. Thompson. Could it have been him? The old man had struggled just to offer a few dollars for the repair. There was no way he could afford to send something like this. But if not him, then who? Mike wrestled with the mystery for the rest of the night. The money felt like a blessing and a burden at the same time. He had bills to pay, rent coming up, and his work as a plumber, though steady, didn't exactly make him rich. But something about this didn't sit right. Someone had given him this money in secret, and he needed to find out why. The next morning, he decided to go back to Mr. Thompson's house. He parked outside and knocked on the old wooden door, waiting as slow shuffling footsteps approached. From inside, the door creaked open, and there stood Mr. Thompson. A little surprised, but happy to see him. Mike, my boy, didn't think I'd be seeing you again so soon. Mike hesitated for a second, then held up the envelope. Mr. Thompson, did you send this? The old man squinted at the money, then let out a soft chuckle. Son, I haven't seen that much cash in years. I can barely afford my electricity bill. I wish I could say it was me, but I'm afraid you've got the wrong guy. Mike frowned. He had been almost certain Mr. Thompson had something to do with it, but if not him, then who? Mr. Thompson patted his arm. Why don't you come inside? Have a cup of coffee. You look like you've seen a ghost. Mike followed him in, still gripping the envelope tightly. He sat at the small kitchen table as Mr. Thompson slowly poured 2 cups of coffee. Tell me something, the old man said, sliding a mug toward Mike. Anyone else know about what you did? Mike shook his head. I don't think so. It was just a quick fix. I didn't tell anyone. Mr. Thompson hummed in thought. Well, son, kindness has a way of echoing further than we think. You never know who's watching. That sentence stuck with Mike as he left. Who had seen what he did? And why would they repay him in such an unbelievable way? A few days passed, and Mike couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening. He started thinking back to the job, trying to remember if anything had seemed unusual. Then, suddenly, it hit him. The window! While he was fixing the sink, he had noticed that the kitchen window faced a neighboring house across the street. The curtains in that house had been slightly open, just enough that someone could have been watching. From inside, Mike felt his pulse quicken. Could it be possible that a stranger, someone he didn't even know, had seen his act of kindness and decided to reward him? Determined to get to the bottom of it, he made his way to the house across the street. He knocked on the door and waited. A few moments later, it opened, revealing a woman in her mid-40s, with kind eyes and a tired expression. Can I help you? She asked, curiosity in her voice. Mike hesitated, unsure how to even explain why he was there. Finally, he took a breath. This might sound strange, but did you happen to see me over at Mr. Thompson's house the other day? When I was fixing his sink, the woman's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment, she didn't say anything. Then, a small smile formed on her lips. I did, she admitted. Softly, Mike's heart pounded. And did you send me this? He held up the envelope. The woman's expression turned serious. She glanced over her shoulder as if checking to see if anyone else was listening, then opened the door wider. You might want to come inside. Mike stepped in, unsure of what he was walking into. The house was neat, filled with family photos and books stacked in small piles. The woman led him to the living room, where she motioned for him to sit. "I need to tell you something," she said, sitting across from him. "But first, I want you to understand what you did for Mr. Thompson. That small act of kindness. It meant more than you realize." Mike leaned forward, his mind spinning. "Who are you?" he asked. She took a deep breath. "My name is Linda. Mr. Thompson is my father-in-law." Mike's eyes widened in shock. Linda continued, her voice soft but steady. "He didn't tell you, but the past few months have been really hard on him. Ever since my husband, his son, passed away, he's been struggling. He doesn't like asking for help. He's too proud. But that night, when you came and helped him without expecting anything in return, I saw the way he looked at you. It was the first time I'd seen him truly smile in a long time." Mike felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't known. He had only done what felt right. But to Mr. Thompson, it had meant so much more. Linda looked at the envelope in his hands. "I didn't send that," she admitted. "But I know who did." Mike's breath caught. "Who?" She hesitated, then stood up. "Come with me." Mike followed her down a short hallway. She stopped at a small wooden desk and pulled open a drawer. Inside was another envelope, just like the one he had received. She held it out to him. "My husband left this before he passed," she said. "It was meant for someone who deserved it." Mike stared at the envelope, his heart pounding as realization began to dawn on him. The mystery wasn't just about money. It was about something much, much bigger, and he was about to find out exactly what. Mike's fingers tightened around the envelope as he stared at Linda, his mind struggling to process what she had just said. Her husband, Mr. Thompson's son, had left this before he passed. But why? And why give it to him, a complete stranger? His hands felt clammy as he carefully opened the second envelope. Inside was another bundle of cash, just like the one he had already received. But there was something else, too. A handwritten letter. The paper was slightly yellowed, as if it had been sitting there for a long time, waiting. Mike unfolded it, his eyes scanning the words, his heart beating faster with every sentence. "If you're reading this, it means you were the kind of person I always hoped would find it. My name is James Thompson. I don't have much time left, but I want to leave behind something more than just money. I want to leave behind a lesson about kindness. When I was young, my father taught me that real wealth isn't in what you have. It's in what you give. He was always helping others, even when we had little. That lesson stuck with me. And before I go, I want to pass it on. Whoever you are, if you helped my father without expecting anything in return, then you are the kind of person this world needs more of. This is my way of thanking you and reminding you that goodness does not go unseen." Mike felt his chest tighten as he read the last line. He glanced up at Linda, who was watching him closely. "He wrote this before he passed?" he asked, his voice quieter than before. She nodded. "He knew my father would need help one day, and he knew that if someone truly good came along, someone who helped him without thinking of a reward, they deserved to know how much it mattered." Mike sat there for a long moment, staring at the letter. He had gone to Mr. Thompson's house that night thinking it was just another job. He had never expected anything in return, but somehow, in the most unexpected way, kindness had found its way back to him. The money in his hands no longer felt like just money. It felt like a message, like proof that even the smallest act of kindness could ripple out in ways no one could predict. "I don't know what to say," he admitted, shaking his head. Linda gave him a small, knowing smile. "You don't have to say anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. The world needs more people like you. Mike left that day feeling different, changed, even, not because of the money, but because of what it represented. He had started his career thinking plumbing was just about fixing pipes and stopping leaks, but now he realized it was more than that. Every house he entered, every person he helped, was a chance to leave something good behind. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth more than anything money could ever buy.